Hello traders at CMC Markets. My name is Trevor Neil. I'm analyst at RRG Research. I'm preparing this report, in which we'll be covering major stock indices and the FANG plus stocks, plus the dollar movements. I'm preparing the report on the evening of the 30th of November. Let us start with a relative rotation graph of major stock global indices versus the MSCI World Index. This is a weekly sampling. Now, if you look at this and look at the direction of the arrowheads here, we've got southwesterly, we've got southeasterly, southwesterly, southwesterly, southwesterly. Almost everything is heading, if you like, in the wrong direction. Southwesterly, westerly means a declining relative ratio, and southerly means a declining JDK RS momentum. There are only two indices which are bucking that trend. The New York FANG, the FANG Plus group, which is heading northerly, and the Nasdaq, which is heading northwesterly. Now, northeasterly would be better because there it would be gaining in both ratio and momentum, but it's northwesterly and this is northerly. But otherwise, we've got everything really pointing in a southwesterly direction. Also, should include the Dow Jones, which is close to the middle here, so it's correlating with the world index and it's heading easterly. So there's quite a strong message here of mostly turning on a weekly basis, sample basis, into a poor direction versus the global indices. Now, what does this mean? It means that other things which are not on the screen here, other markets, smaller markets, must be doing better because this is an average of all markets. So if major markets are heading southwesterly generally, then what makes up the average must be doing better. So if you like, the real opportunities perhaps are in those smaller markets, but we're concentrating on the larger markets. Now let's go to the daily version of it. And here we've got most of the indices, the FTSE, the CAC, the Nikkei, the Hang Seng, which just seems to be permanently awful, and the Australian index, the Dow, the stocks, the S&P, all in this lagging quadrant, the wrong place. And this is because they've hit a bit of a buffer. Here too, the two that looked better on a weekly sampling have turned sharply and with long tails in the case of the FANG. Look at that. They're sweeping through in the last 5 days. Sharp message of deterioration. And Julius de Campanard, my colleague at RRG Research, highlighted this earlier this week of the struggle in the indices, and particularly the US indices and particularly the FANG and constituents, that they were having had such strong movements up, they were hitting resistance, losing momentum, very precarious, and his RRG had picked this up just in time, I would say. That's the daily chart of the S&P, and this is what Julius had picked up, this declining momentum in this strong market here. We were losing power in it, and it has stalled, and you must say that this week it's really just moved sideways. However, it has come back to a support level, and this is from the September high here. If it's going to stop, there's a good place to stop, and that's at around 4,540. If it fails there, then the next level is 4,500. So I would say that we're going to test those levels. Holding will be constructive for a retest of the high here at 4,600, and then the longer term high at 4,632. But at the moment we're looking for it to stabilize and present a buy opportunity in the direction of this very strong trend. You can see here the MACD during this week, the gap narrowed as we lost power on the upside, and on the RSI from a very high reading that we've begun to flatten out. So it's in a mode of stand aside in it for traders, and rather than investors, stand aside and look for signs of stability and preparing for a resumption of the very strong uptrend, which is likely to happen, but either at this level or at, let me draw it in, 4,512. Now moving to the Nasdaq, here is the RRG lines, and we see the momentum turned and now the ratio turned down. This was a warning back a few days ago that this move, this seemingly breakout of the July high was failing, and we've returned and we're just at this moment slightly below the July high. This move can extend. We can see here on the MACD it's actually crossing down, the first time it has done since that low back early in November, and the RSI has flattened out, and we had some bearish divergence with the higher, lower high here. Another warning. The likely next move for it is back down towards support at 15,600 and moving into the gap that was left at the beginning of November. If that fails, then the next level of support is 15,350. But let's watch and observe and expect the market to come lower and present an opportunity at one of these support levels, but not at this moment. We were warned, and it was time to step aside from that. Aggressive people might have got short on, but I myself would not recommend that in any way at all, because this is a strong bull market, just overextended, and is now correcting. But we're in the stages of correcting where we can't really say yet where it's going to settle down. So the next few days we will look for these levels to indicate where we're going to stabilize and where the opportunities lie. There was one index on the RRG, the daily RRG chart, that was different from the others, and that was the DAX. The DAX was moving into the leading quadrant across, and it was high up with high momentum. And here it is here, doing something different to the other markets, soaring ahead and accelerating, and actually showing a great deal of power at this point. We've got some softening of the momentum on the RRG, but very strong movement in the MACD here, gap actually widening at this point, and the RSI holding up extremely well. We're approaching old resistance here, and you can see where this comes from. This comes back from November 2021 high, the January 22 high, two highs in here. So we're approaching that level, and then the all-time high is up here at 16,515. So we're coming up to a very important level, but we're doing so with extremely good momentum. And as I look at it at this point, apart from the sort of overbought situation, but the RSI is high because the market itself is very strong. The hurdle is a 16,300 level, but it is heading for it with a great deal of power. And I think the chances of it actually managing to get through that is relatively high, and then we'll be within striking distance of that July high at 16,520. So this is a great looking chart here with a lot of power, not losing momentum yet, unlike the other things which were curving down as we saw in the RRG chart. Not so here. So more to go, I think, on this one as we approach these important resistance levels, but with this kind of momentum it can keep pushing on through. Now here's a RRG graph of the FANG Plus stocks. Now with what we've seen in the Nasdaq, the blunting of the movement in the Nasdaq, it's not surprising to see all of these curving around quite strongly and heading as a group in the southwesterly direction. Westerly losing relative strength and also losing momentum. There isn't one that isn't in that direction. So all of them are giving us the same message, a topping out, maybe temporarily, but topping out message. So let's have a look at a couple of the big ones. Now Nvidia had already topped out, the MACD crossing down here in this area up here, failing at the big round number of 500 is what I would say, and that was also the top back here in August, and we tackled it again, and we have really failed. We have also broken through the first good level of support, which is a 4,000 at 400, and it's now pointing sharply downwards. And look at the RSI at this point here, it's really deteriorated. Look at this RSI reading right down here at about 40. Not many securities have pulled back that far to bring the RSI quickly down from a reading of 83 down to 40. Note there was a bearish divergence, high, higher, high, lower, high, small bearish divergence right here at the top at that big round 500 round number. This one looks like it's going lower. It's got momentum on the downside. We're in an area of consolidation, a big broad area of consolidation which extends right down to 400. It's difficult to say where in that it may stabilize, but this is one to avoid for the moment until it decides where it's going to settle down, somewhere between here and should be above 400. And Tesla, as it has been moving up very strongly, but it too, just in the short term, seems to be topping out and putting in a 1, 2, 3, 4th point in to make a very strong and clear downtrend line, and that's currently at around 250 level. And so I would say that this rise has temporarily come to an end. Certainly a break of the 231 level would be very destructive for it and indicate a retest of the 225 or the 206 low, and hopefully holding the 200 level here. But here on the RSI, you can see here we had a bearish divergence, high, high, lower, high warning here. So this too looks like it's put in a temporary top and is yet to indicate where it's likely to hold. Now Netflix too, at a pretty predictable level, because this was a long-term resistance level at 484, which gave us this high here with this doji at the top here back in July, and then here we approach it again, losing momentum. Now the MACD is crossing. It does look as though this will be falling back to the region of 452. On the RSI, see here it has fallen away very sharply indeed, indicating a top is in place, and we have to see how it behaves as it approaches this support level. But again, time to be out of this, I would say, unless we can break that important resistance at 485 level. Moving to Microsoft, which has been one of my favorites, particularly most recently from this break of 366. But now this too looks like it's gone as far as it can for this run, which has been terrific since it took off from 311 back in September. The MACD here is on the verge of crossing the RSI. Bearish divergence in place here. These are strong warnings that this part of the move could be over. I would be looking for the behavior as it gets back to 365, which it indicating that it is likely to do. Of course, if it breaks through 385, then we're on our way up again. But then in the shorter term, it looks as though this is topped out and is ready to retrace. And finally, of the FANG Plus stocks, Meta lost momentum. The MACD has actually crossed here, topped out at 342. Now it has broken, it's currently breaking, the support level of 326, and the current candle is breaking through it. So we've got these two highs in place here. So if it breaks through there, it's difficult to know where it is likely to hold next. Let me just tidy up that line there. Could be around 312. We've got a body of solid support here. That ends down at 275, but somewhere in this area here it's likely to stabilize, given that we're in a strong uptrend and this consolidation is quite stiff body of consolidation. But at the moment, the RSI falling away sharply, can extend further. We're gaining momentum on the downside. We have to watch for where stability kicks in, but in the shorter term it looks like lower first. Now moving to the dollar, and this is a weekly our major currencies versus the US dollars, and you can see here we've got a very clear message. We've got a northeasterly direction here, the heavyweight euro moving nicely through the improving quadrant towards the leading quadrant. The pound too swinging around, also the yen here moving strongly in the northeasterly direction as well. When we go down to the daily sampling, we get a different message. We get a somewhat of a blunting of that, particularly the euro. Sinking away sharply here, the pound moving in the same way here, all of these losing short-term momentum, therefore heading southerly, but still, in this case, strong. So strong with a blunting, topping out, short-term topping out move is what we're seeing in the RRG chart. And we see that too in the price chart. So here is the euro on the daily chart, and it hit resistance from the June high, precisely at the June high at 110.70, and it's turned down sharply. It's that southerly fall in the RRG chart. The next support comes in at 108.26 at this low here, and I would look for how the market behaves at that point. But it does look as though that's where it wants to go. We had a warning in the RSI with a high and a higher high, lower high, and here you see prior to that all higher highs, high, higher high, higher high, then lower high in the RSI. So it was a good warning there. The support isn't that strong, so beware as you approach, but we were looking for some positive candles at that level would indicate that the reaction, the pullback is complete. But don't be premature about it. Look for the price action to give you the signal. Now, sterling cable, as I speak, we've got a reversal in place here as it approached the resistance from this high at 127.85. Topped out at 127.20. It does look as though it's going to go a bit lower, but what is impressive is the MACD, the gap is nice and wide here, so strong momentum on the upside, and then the RSI is higher high, still got a higher high here, not a bearish divergence. Yes, we pulled back sharply, but this would usually indicate that we will stabilize somewhere close but lower than where we are now. The first level of support it comes to is at 125.50, and then the second level of support is at 124.47. So looking for it to pull back further, to continue this pullback and extend it a little bit further, but let's observe at these support levels the behavior of the market for an opportunity there to rejoin the strong uptrend that we admire here from this very positive looking MACD. Then we will end with quite an extraordinary graph here. This is the yen. Now remember where the yen was on the RRG chart, but here we came up to, incredibly, the October 2022 high, and almost exactly we touched it. We lost momentum as we approached it. Here's the MACD down here, and it turned and it did turn down. And here we are on the RSI with loss of momentum in this last stages of it. Really, it started to lose momentum back in September, and we've topped out just precisely at the same level. Now, what about support? The clear support that we're coming up to is from this June high, and then these two lows in here from August and right at the beginning of September, and that's at 145. So this move here can extend. It has got some momentum on the downside, for sure it has, and looking at the MACD, the gap is widening on the downside here, and it looks as though it's heading lower, and the area of support is really at 145, and it's quite a strong area of support. And so given the momentum that we've got, it doesn't look as though we're going to get there. I thank you all very much indeed for listening. I hope that you find this useful and beneficial, and I hope you have a great week next week. And from Trevor Neil of RRG Research, have a great weekend, and may the trend be with you. Bye bye.